Hello there, fellow investigators. Welcome to the Dark Aether Files podcast presents The War on Pop Culture. I'm Special Agent Spooky Clutter.
I'm Special Agent Carter Sauce.
And I'm the
for this episode, we are joined by our guest, the King of a Nation. How you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on the podcast tonight.
So, you guys have probably heard us talk about this briefly before. I've teased about it for a few months now that we are going to be doing this series called The War on Pop Culture. And so here we are. This is what I would call our prologue episode. It's going to be one of our shorter episodes in this series, just so everyone watching can understand what the series is going to be about. And we're going to go into detail about that. And we're going to also give our own little personal stories about the war on pop culture and everything about that. So to get started, the War on Pop Culture is a series that we were talking about developing because we noticed a decline in the quality of our entertainment. Unlike a lot of people, we aren't blind consumers, meaning that if there is a movie that is being put out from a beloved franchise and this particular movie is not good, we're not going to blindly consume it and say, yeah, it's bad, but I like it anyway, and it should get more love and attention. So this series is going to be evaluating different topics related to pop culture and identity politics. So there's going to be some political things, but it's all connected because identity politics and this sort of political era that we're in right now is affecting the quality of our entertainment. So it's affecting our movies, TV shows, video games, books, etc. And we're going to be evaluating that. There's going to be a few episodes where we're going to be talking about a particular subject. One subject is called tokenism or tokenization. That's going to be a big one. That'll actually be our first episode, our first official episode in this series. And we're going to go into some different examples, a few different breakdowns. I'm going to reference a video from a fellow YouTuber who's done a really great job of breaking this down. And when we start looking into some of the clips in his video, I'll have a link in the description to the original video so you can watch it for yourself, come to your own conclusions, and go from there. We'll also be talking about certain news articles or any new announcements from any of the big corporations that are in charge of Marvel, DC, Star Wars, things like that. And kind of give our reactions and kind of, break down these things and give our general thoughts and opinions on all of it and go from there. So for me, I'll start with my own personal experience with when I noticed that popular culture was on the down low, like it was declining. And I noticed this starting in 2012. And I don't know what it was, but there was just certain movies and TV shows that they weren't as good as some previous movies and TV shows, talking on particular franchises. And ever since 2012, we've been getting a lot of different projects that they're just not very good anymore. And some of these projects were based on movies and TV shows, comic books that I remember reading and watching. And it just, I don't know what it was, man. It was very sad because when I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2012, that's when George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, he sold it to the big mouse.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's kind of where things started. I think most of us were sort of concerned about Star Wars at that point, although my concerns for Star Wars were nothing like what we got. And of course, that's how it all started. So Star Wars getting sold to Disney, I was worried that they were going to Disneyfy it. But at that time, it was completely different. My mindset on what that meant, completely different. But there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and really quick address the chat because we got a few people in chat. Bacon Pew Pew, what's going on, man? He says, hey, Caleb, hey, Carter, hey, Caleb's dad. How you doing, Bacon? Hope you're doing well. We got Miss C in the chat. She says, hey, everybody. Hey, Bacon. How you guys doing? Hope you guys are having a good evening. Welcome to the show. So, fast forward to 2015, December, to be more specific. Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. I remember every news station, every major news outlet was talking about this film and how hyped it was that Star Wars was coming back, and everybody was excited about it. And when we first saw the film, we liked it. I'll be the first to admit that I liked it at first because it was a long time since we had got a Star Wars film. The last Star Wars film that we got at that point was 10 years ago in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, we've had the Clone Wars TV series. We had a few video games, novels here and there. But as far as a major movie, we didn't have it. So having that return to Star Wars got everybody hyped up, and everybody was fueled on nostalgia and emotion and really weren't thinking clearly. Now, there were some people that I personally follow now that back then they saw the movie for what it was. It was a cash grab. It was banking on heavy nostalgia. Many people compared it to Star Wars A New Hope, saying that it was basically a remake. And when you look at certain elements of that film, it absolutely was. It was a safe movie. They were banking on the nostalgia of seeing Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, the Millennium Falcon, C-3PO. Having these legacy characters come back is what people wanted to see. They wanted to see the original cast come back, and that's what got everybody to go sit down in those seats. Of course, looking at the entire sequel trilogy years later in retrospect, it wasn't really the best. It really wasn't, but we'll eventually get into that later. And then I started noticing things in comic books where I was starting to see a lot of characters getting remade for a modern audience, as they put it.
Oh,
So
God.
certain characters that were one way suddenly became different. So something that happened was they had different versions of Superman. They had a black Superman. I thought this was kind of weird because they had turned Superman black, and he was a different character from a different universe, but it's still Superman. It's just an alternate version of Superman. But the whole idea of making a different version of Superman is just weird for me, and it's kind of lazy. But we'll get into that particular subject in our next episode. But I started just noticing a decline in content, that things were repeating themselves. They were banking off of old things, bringing them back into the mainstream, and it didn't feel like a worthy successor. It felt like a watered-down version of something that was older. And that's just what I've noticed ever since 2012, personally. Whoever wants to go next, go ahead, give your testimony.
I'll give my testimony. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Take a swig. Take a swig.
In the words of Donald Trump, the Hollywood dream is dead.
That's funny.
Yeah, I had to pull that card. But anyway, so when it wasn't until a year before, like 2014 or 2015, they announced Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and when we saw it, I was like a little hyped though. But then when I saw it again, I realized, what the fuck? It's like that meme though, like, hey, can I copy your homework? Sure, just try not to make it look too similar. And what do you think? It's basically a retelling, or basically like it's basically a remake of A New Hope, though, where we see this girl who's on a saint. We see this main character, normal character, sandy planet, just boring life, wishing for adventure, and guess what? It appears, and it just makes me like, are they seriously just trying to, like, why would you do that? And basically, I was like, ugh, I can't believe you didn't have any chances of thinking about telling different stories of like new versions of Star Wars. And basically, Kathleen Kennedy said this, and I quote, we didn't have any source materials to make a new film movies. And I'm quoting this meme, like the fandom, and behind me, like a whole bunch of Star Wars novels and graphic novels written by fans. Like, is this bitch serious? Like, seriously, you have a shitload of novels, graphic novels, and fanfics written by fans, and you said you didn't have source material. Like, hello? Not to mention that The Mandalorian, like, the first 2 seasons, season 2 was a surefire of hope. It gave me hope that the Star Wars series would come back. If you haven't seen The Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2, go watch it. Because if not, then in the words of Wesley from Wanted, what the fuck have you been doing lately? Because now there's a spoiler. At the end of season 2, when Luke comes back being a straight badass, not Jake Skywalker, I'm like, oh my god, yes. Like, I felt a twinge in my heart that there was hope that Star Wars would come back. But nope. Like, it was like pulling the nostalgia, like pulling the rug out under you. And then, like, you're standing there, like, Luke Skywalker comes back, you are the fish, and that is the bait. In the words of, what was the name of that comedian that cancel culture wanted to talk about?
Dave Chappelle?
Dave Chappelle. In the words of Dave Chappelle, gotcha, bitch. And with the firing of Gina Carano because of her for having a different opinion, some dumbasses who take it out of context. I'm like, okay, that's it. Star Wars dead. Okay, you had me there, but then you decided to pull this shit on us. Okay, fuck you. I'm done. And
Yeah,
don't
see,
even get me sorry.
That's what ruined The Mandalorian for me. Ultimately, is like the series itself was. If I'm being honest, I mean, it was mediocre, but I think that fans were more open to receive it because it didn't outright just stink, right? But when they fired Gina Carano, I was basically done with Star Wars at that point, at least from Disney. I can still enjoy the first 6 films. I can enjoy Star Wars, The Clone Wars just fine, but that's why it's like I'm not really excited for Boba Fett or Obi-Wan coming back because this is still the very same company that fired Gina Carano for having a certain opinion, who her co-host, Pedro Pascal, had a similar opinion, but from an opposite point of view, and they let him stay on, but her post, what got her fired, is too problematic. And that's why I can't really appreciate or honor whatever they put out for Star Wars, because I'm always going to remember them for the fact that they fired Gina Carano for BS.
Can you remind me what she said? What exactly did she say?
Well, okay, so the post that she made, it was a post about politics and how the Nazis didn't merely just round up the Jews by going house to house pulling them out. They had their people's own neighbors selling them out.
Yeah.
Little Tekashi 6ix9ine assholes.
Well, it was a slow creep, to be honest with you. Like what's happening in the United States today.
Yes.
It's slowly attacking certain groups. People don't realize or don't remember or don't know that they just didn't go after the Jews. They went after the gypsies. They went after the homosexuals. They went after those that were sick, mentally ill.
Elderly.
Yeah, just as a side note, here in the United States, Hitler took a lot of what American policy was towards retard people that were retarded. That was a term that was used back then.
Yeah, or mentally retarded, or basically who weren't anybody who was the less superior of the Aryan race.
Exactly. And so she stepped out into a minefield telling the truth. And
then she got in trouble for it.
Right. And there's a certain status quo that goes in Hollywood and politics and in government that it's really sad, because the people are what makes, the fandom. Okay. Just like it's the people that make up the country. And thank God in our country that it's constitutional republic with power that's broken down through 3 different branches. But when you get into Hollywood, the corporation doesn't want to be broken up in their power structure. What they say goes, and if you don't tote that line, you become a threat to the system. And so that system needs to be well oiled to go forward. And if you are like making a kink in that, then that's a problem.
Yeah. I'm going to quickly address the chat. So we got Red Rusty in the chat. He says, "Sup, Caleb and Carter. Interesting title. What's this all about? Sounds like a yummy discussion fuel." Yeah, so I would recommend that you go back to the beginning of the stream whenever you have a chance. Basically, what this is we're going to be evaluating modern cinema. We're going to be evaluating things that are happening in the world of cinema, and basically how a lot of most modern movies, TV shows aren't very good, and why. That's a pretty good generalization of what we're talking about, and discussing a few other subjects in between. He also says, "I got her 5 movies," referring to Gina Carano. "I do love her as an action hero. All her movies are that. I was shocked about her statement, though. Not sure she meant it the way it came out or not." Well, here's the thing. She was trying to make a statement that people of differing political opinions, or opinions in general, are being targeted by big media corporations, and that it's wrong, first of all. And it's also dangerous because the Nazis did the same thing in World War II, where they started making bad guys out of certain groups of people. Therefore, the other people would turn against those people. And then, of course, the Nazis just took over everybody anyway. And
turn them into straight up snitches.
Yeah. And, of course, everybody ended up getting screwed up. Even the German people in Germany got fucked over. And they were supposed to be the Aryan race or whatever. So that's something similar to what's happening today, where people of certain political opinions are being outed. They're being ridiculed and labeled as anything from racist, sexist, whatever the ists and phobes that the internet comes out with. And all of that is affecting cinema in one way or another. You may not notice it right away. It may not be very obvious. Some movies and TV shows do it in a much more in-your-face way than others. And that's essentially what this series is. We're going to be delving into that. We're going to be talking about certain subjects related to those things. But with Gina Carano and her being fired, that upset all of us. And it's actually one of the reasons why we are no longer part of a network. And if you were following us on our podcast, you know that we were a part of a network. I'm not going to say what network, just out of respect. But because we spoke out against the firing of Gina Carano, we were removed from that network. And that's sort of been a driving force for us to do this series, because we felt that pain of her being removed for having a different opinion. And so here we are today discussing that, among other things.
Anyway, as I was saying, my thoughts exactly on that. Then we come to the biggest piece of shit in the sequel trilogy, The Last Jedi. More like the last fuck up. So it's not to mention, okay, I keep saying not to mention a lot, but The Last Jedi, this movie, or I call it The Last Fuck Up, is really, really, really fucking bad. Okay, you know how bad this movie is? It's like giving me a fucking choice, though. Like having, if you have a gun to my head, if someone put a gun to my head saying you could only watch one movie, but the other 2, you're good. You either watch The Last Jedi, Woke Ghostbusters 2016, or 2 Girls, 1 Cup. I'm pretty sure I would just watch 2 Girls, 1 Cup instead of those other big piles of shit. Because it's basically the same thing, though. It's all shit. It's basically everybody eating shit. Not to mention Ghostbusters 2016, that movie, it just felt like it felt like a shitty, mediocre Saturday Night Live sketch. I'm just waiting for one of the cast members to capture a ghost and say, "Live from New York, it's Saturday Night Live." That's what I'm fucking waiting to hear. And then stuff like that. Anyway, don't even get me started on on a bunch of characters I fucking hate so much. Rose Tico, or Tycho, or TikTok, whatever the fuck her last name is, and Admiral Hordo. Her name is Haldo, but I call her Hordo because she's a whore. Yeah. And not to mention, I'm pretty sure she works for the First Order though, because she doesn't tell us what we're doing. Like, she doesn't tell us if, like, what's the plan. She demoralizes, or she like she
You talking about the way she treated Poe?
Oh yes, like, what's the word? Like, what is it? Like, not demoralized, but like talk to him, like mistreated him. It's like, you know what though? It's like Poe was like a kid being sent to, was like Poe being sent to the principal's office, and the principal's a total dick though, and he's chewing his ass out for it. And to be honest though, some of the vehicles made no fucking sense though, and how the hell in the fuck, like, what the hell kind of bombers were those things? What are those fucking T-bombers? Those big-ass heavy bombers, though? What happened to the Y-wing bombers? Why didn't they make a comeback? They didn't make a comeback in The Force Awakens. They made a comeback in the Rise of Skywalker, or as I call it, Shitwalker, because that's how much I hate that film. Like, oh, those come back, but what the fuck are these T-bomber things? What are those things? What are those T-wings? Because they look like T's though, because they're like in the shape of a T, and they're like giant bombers. So
well, they were trying to like mimic in a way like the World War II bombing through different theaters across Europe and stuff.
Yeah,
and that's where that came from.
Yeah, I know. Not to mention it's slow as fuck.
Just really quick, Carter, I want to address a comment from Rusty, because he says, but didn't she, referring to Gina Carano, make her statement very targeted, as in she was only referring to the right-wingers being oppressed by the left wing? She made it seem very targeted, which is what got her into trouble. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you, Rusty. I'm going to show it here. I know it's going to be a little bit blurry, but this is the post that she made, the one on the right that shows the woman screaming. I'm going to read it off to you, and then we're going to talk about it. So she made this post on Instagram, and it says, Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How's that any different from hating someone for their political views? Now, when you read that, first of all, there is no mention about Democrats, or Republicans, conservatives, or liberals. Okay, there's no mention of political parties. Okay, it says people hating someone for their different political views. Now, I have a few friends that are liberal. Okay, that they consider themselves liberal. And they have told me that the hardcore leftist stuff going on is affecting them too. Because it's not merely just when you have people that, I'll give an example. You have black people that don't agree with Black Lives Matter. And a lot of times those black people will get called derogatory names or terms like Uncle Tom or race traitors. Race traitors. Okay, so if you have a movement that says that they're defending a certain group of people, and then some of those people that group is trying to represent say that we don't agree with what you're saying, and then they get outed for that, that's the kind of thing that Gina Carano was trying to point out, just as an example. Now, you had many news outlets that were saying that, she's just a racist Republican Trump supporter. She never made it public who she voted for, first of all. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring up a post by her former fellow co-star from Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal. And while I do that, Carter, you can continue with your story.
Anyway, as I was saying, though, the The Last Jedi. It should have been called The Last Fuck Up, though. And when we get to the scene where Rey finally meets Luke Skywalker, she hands him this, like, her father's lightsaber and his lightsaber. He's looking at it, and then just comedically he just throws it off a cliff. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then the whole crowd started laughing. I'm like, what the fuck? Why did you do that? Like, what did you do that for?
Yeah, I
And
guess.
then it
yeah.
turns out that Luke Skywalker was afraid because, like, the reason he doesn't teach the Jedi anymore is because he failed Ben Solo, which was actually Kylo Ren, which is stupid. Not to mention, like, seriously, you are one of the most famous rebel war heroes, and you just decide to turn your back on them. What would your sister say? Like in times of need, though, and not to mention, we see Luke's X-wing underwater, and it just pisses me off though that that Raijo bastardized him because he got bullied by a person wearing a Luke Skywalker t-shirt. Oh,
all right. So this is something that Pedro Pascal posted on Instagram or Twitter. I can't remember which one it was, but this is what it had on there.
Losers.
1865 losers, 1945 losers, 2020.
Now you got the Confederate flag,
the Nazi flag.
Then you have the Trump hat. Basically, what he was trying to say was that Trump supporters are Nazis and Confederates
and rebels.
Well, last time I checked, and look, I'm not taking political sides here. I'm just laying out the facts for you. You have Trump supporters that are non-white. So you got Hispanic Trump supporters. You have Asian Trump supporters.
You got Black Trump
supporters. And if Trump supporters are being compared to Nazis, well, I guess then you have Black Nazis, apparently.
Probably Blacksies.
Now, the reason why I show that and I mention that is because Pedro Pascal posted this while he was still employed at Disney, Lucasfilm, and he didn't get fired for this, but Gina Carano did. And that is hypocritical as hell.
Yeah, because he didn't back anything up. I mean, you're showing a flag, which he has no idea what was going on during the Civil War, because slavery was not the major thing of what was going on with the South and the North. It was much bigger than that. And the Nazis didn't have anything to do with anything going on in the South, and the comparison with the Trump thing is just unbelievable.
But here's the thing. What that post was trying to say is that Trump supporters are racist. That is the interpretation. That's why you have that, because you have the Nazis that were all about white power and the Aryan race. You had people of the South that the only thing that people think of when they think of the South is slavery.
Right. Look, like right now, I'm going to tell you right now, first of all, you can't stop somebody hating somebody. I don't care if they're black, white, Hispanic, Asian. But I'm not saying that you don't have, if there's this idea that there's a huge contingency of white supremacists in the United States, I don't think there is. Just like I don't think there's a huge contingency of black supremacy, but there is black and white supremacists. That's true. I'm not going to say
it's the
as far as a huge movement, like the FBI infiltrated the Nazi movement, believe it or not, here in the United States, and white supremacist movements all throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and it's been pretty much rooted out. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to deny that there are still people in this country as we speak. I will not deny that there are people that hate anybody that's non-white. What I am saying is that they are not in positions of power, and their influence on this society is very minute. Now, what is the evidence of that? Well, let me put it to you this way. If this country was as hardcore, like white supremacy, as people like to claim it is, then Obama wouldn't have been elected twice. the numbers just don't add up.
And most white people voted for him more than blacks.
Because white people are still a majority in this country,
Right, that's true.
Statistically speaking. Okay, so the idea that the system is racist towards a certain group of people on a mass scale is ridiculous. Are there small pockets across this country? Sure there is. And you're always going to have people that will hate somebody else simply for existing the way they are.
And here, let me drop something else on you guys too. People don't realize that white people didn't invent slavery. Slavery had been going on
for hundreds and thousands of years.
Definitely hundreds, over 1,000 years ago. The Arab slave trade was literally blacks selling blacks from the African continent, because whites from, say, the Dutch lands,
Europe,
the European lands up there, yeah, they made it around in certain areas, but a lot of the conquering was because one tribe took over another tribe and sold to whoever the highest bidder was. People don't realize too that over 1,000 years before the Atlantic slave trade, you had blacks that were leaving North Africa and literally floating through the Mediterranean, going up to Ireland and England. They were raiding small towns and taking people that happened to be of fair skin, white skin, whatever you want to call it, and bringing them back to Africa. Why do you think you have in North Africa the skin tones that you have over the centuries? Because of conquering, because of war. One group took over another, and then of course, impregnation, families, So the history of slavery is equally spread to every color scheme of skin under the sun, and it's evil. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just so that we're in this time period now, and the Atlantic slave trade included a lot of those ships, believe it or not, were owned by Jewish people. If you look up slave ship owners, you'll find out that Jewish people own those ships.
Yeah. And let me just say this.
History is terrible, man, sadly.
So look, I want to say this just so for anybody that watches this now or watches this later, just so they understand where, at least me personally, I'm speaking for me personally, I'm not speaking for anybody else here. This is me. I don't subscribe to any political party. I'm not a registered Republican, registered Democrat. I don't call myself a conservative or a liberal. Why? Because the system is based on dividing people. This whole idea that conservatives, Republicans are always clashing against Democrats and who has the right ideas and whatnot, that's very divisive to me, or divisive. I hate that. So I choose to separate myself from any political party or any political labels. Okay. I'm merely looking at both sides, and I say, okay, Republicans have some good points, and Democrats have some good points, but both parties are full of nothing but corruption. So I remove myself from that, and it's relevant because when people try and label me as just another conservative ranting about liberal Hollywood, I say, well, first of all, I'm not conservative, so you can stop labeling me as that. And if it was the other way around, where it was hardcore Republicans or conservative mindsets that were ruling Hollywood and preventing people that were liberal from voicing their opinions, I would be saying the very same thing I'm saying now. That's
right. Well, you know what? I think everybody in this room has conservative values, liberal values. I mean, it's sort of like a Heinz 57. It's just not one side,
Yeah, it's different sides though.
But the whole thing, because we got off into the weeds there, bringing it back into the theater, it's affected the theater. It's affected. Yeah. Go ahead.
Rusty said something.
Yeah. So Rusty says, I'm no fan of PC culture. I personally did not like the Captain Marvel thing. The Stand remake was ruined by it. Black Christmas Money 2019. Many other recent offerings have been ruined by it. Absolutely. And that's the kind of things that we're going to be talking about. That's one of the things that we're going to be, that's what you said there, Rusty, is essentially what we're going to be covering. And different things we're going to get into some of the PC culture, some of the terms that are out there, We're going to break it down here. We're going to give our thoughts on it. And that's essentially what part of the show is going to be about.
You know, and thank God that we had strong leading women decades ago. There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, Sigourney Weaver, Carrie Fisher, there's a plethora
Linda
of
Hamilton.
women. Yeah, ladies that, man, they stole the cinema stage. And back when I was a kid, that's great. We didn't, that was good. Men and women, you know, both being able to perform, and they won awards. I can't count how many Academy Award shows I watched. I didn't sit there. My dad didn't sit there, certainly, and say, "Oh God, a woman. Oh, she's acting." You know, I'm not saying that didn't happen in the past, but back in the, for me, because I was born in '71, that was great. I mean, I didn't have a problem with that. My dad didn't have a problem with that. People we knew, we didn't have a problem with it. There were strong leading ladies. We enjoyed that.
So Rusty says, I'm a hard progressive, very liberal, honestly, but I agree with her statement, Gina Carano. From either extreme side, I know the right jumped in and claimed her as theirs, probably how it got skewered against her. And see, here's the thing, man, and this is just for everybody, that no matter what your political opinions are, you should be able to work. And you should be able, you should be able to work with people of different backgrounds too. It's called coexisting, okay? Because I guarantee you that if you have a 9-to-5 job, that there are people at your work that do not agree with you politically. Yet you can still work with them. You can still communicate with them. You can still be civil. And that's what we're advocating for.
Exactly.
I'm not advocating for Pedro Pascal, excuse me, to be fired because of that post. I may not agree with it, and I may think that that's a very stupid thing that he posted, but I'm not going to call for him getting fired. And I'm also not going to say that Gina Carano should return to Disney because honestly, she's too good for them.
Yeah.
So, but
and I want to say something.
I don't want what happened to Gina Carano to happen to anybody else because it's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a viewpoint, and every time a conservative says something, you know, because you have a lot of left leaning that's in the media, in Hollywood, you know, in the news, you know, and I don't understand. I mean, your opinion has value, okay? So this idea that, and this is where they get the conquer and divide. I call it the powers that be, because I believe that there is a global structure that is trying to destroy humanity, and they will use at the lower levels what they consider the lower levels of what they call conservative liberalism to destroy itself so they can implement their phase of whatever their agenda is.
And you know, it's funny because I want to pay some attention to a few different Marvel films that were put out recently. So Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings and the Eternals. So I haven't seen these films, but I've heard a lot about them, and specifically how they were banned in China. Now, to my knowledge, Shang-Chi is a Chinese superhero. Okay, he was developed obviously here in Marvel, but he was a Chinese hero. So getting that representation for Chinese people. Okay, but his movie was banned in China. The Eternals was also banned in China. One of the reasons is that there was what was it? Two of the characters in the Eternals were gay, right? And China doesn't like certain groups of people. One, they don't like homosexuality.
They don't like
Two,
blacks.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They don't like black people either. One example of this is the poster for Star Wars The Force Awakens had Finn, okay? And Finn, as you guys know if you've seen the film, was a prominent character in that film. Well, for the Chinese poster, they shrunk his image down. Very small. Not so small that you couldn't notice him, but small enough to where you would think, oh, well, he's not a main character now. Okay, so when you have Hollywood here lecturing you about how they want black representation, Black Lives Matter, or LGBT representation, yet they have no problem shrinking down a character in a poster for China so that they could have the movie there in China, or where they just straight up ban the movies in general. I have a problem with that. And that's hypocritical as hell. It is very hypocritical.
Yeah,
And,
that's that's racism right there. If you want to, if you want to label it there in China, you know.
So, Rusty says, agree. According to how far someone expects courtesy to go, I honestly am not going to be courteous to someone who believes, for instance, gay folks should be imprisoned or evil.
Well, let's go over to. I mean, believe it or not, over in the Middle East, man, you've got certain countries that they throw gays off of rooftops.
They still do,
they
actually.
Won't let, yeah,
it's something that's been happening for a very long time.
They won't let.
But you don't have people
women
that preach about the shit here. They preach about and say that we should be accepting for gay people, for example. But you never, ever, ever hear them talk about what happens to gay people in other countries, because this country, despite its flaws, is one of the best countries that you can be in for freedom of choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there still discrimination here? Of course there is. But you're going to find discrimination wherever you fucking go. And you're never going to fully eliminate it. But that shouldn't hold you back from trying to better yourself and the people you care about.
Yeah, not to mention that way back in the 1900s, or way back when, that either like the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or some of that area, that they practice being gay in secret though, but that being gay in public though, that would either get you arrested, or they would either castrate you, or other stuff like that, though. Not to mention though that one hero, I forgot his name. He was the grandfather, like the great grandfather, like the guy who broke the German secret code thing in World War II. He was a British guy. He broke down like this German computer device to break down like Nazi secret coded messages and stuff. For his work though, it was because of his work that inspired us to have computers. If it wasn't for him though, we wouldn't have what we're using right nowadays to talk to people, write stuff and all that sort of thing though. And he was gay, and because of that, he got imprisoned for that though. And it wasn't until 6 years later he was pardoned.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Did you? How about the code talkers? I think it was the Navajo Nation that created a.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the Native Americans. I'm talking about the guy who was gay. The Enigma code. Yeah, that guy. I was talking about that guy who the grandfather of who designed the computers, who was the grandfather of giving us the computer, but for his actions, though, that some people in the world, even that they're inventors, writers, actors, talk show hosts, whatever, some of them are either gay or they're closet gay. Okay, and they're afraid that if not to mention though that example like the Ellen DeGeneres show, like there was a show about Ellen DeGeneres, like a sitcom show. And it turns out, though, that in one episode or one of the seasons, she came out of the closet, and because of that, she got canceled for that. And another thing, though, some people didn't like that, though.
When did that happen?
I think it was the Ellen DeGeneres show. I think it was either late 90s, early thousands, I think.
Okay. So ever since then, you've been getting a lot more representation.
Exactly. But not to mention...
people have become more accepting of it.
Yes, exactly. And not to mention in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Willow was straight at first, and then she went lesbo.
Mm-hmm.
And then people didn't go batshit insane about that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure there were probably people that didn't really like it. And you know what? What you do with whoever you want to do it with is your business. I have no right to tell you what you can and can't do. And that's kind of like the mindset that, it's a pretty neutral mindset. You're not going to see me go out of my way to go to any rallies or anything, but you will hear me say that whatever your lifestyle, as long as you're not hurting anybody, then I don't really care. And that's something that I always tell people. If you're gay, hey, all right, cool, I guess. I don't care in the sense that I don't really want to focus on that. If if you're using your sexuality or your heritage to fully define you as a person, that's kind of like a personal problem, because you as a person should matter, not just mainly because of your sexuality. That shouldn't be what defines you. It should be your actions that define you, how you treat others, what you do with your life. That's how you define yourself to other people.
Alan Turing was his name, the guy who wrote the Enigma code.
Yeah, I mean, skills, talents, and abilities come
Thank
to
you.
the table. If you remember back in Hollywood, early on, it was sort of like a patriarchy. Men were ruling everything, and of course, women could do the same work as a man, but they were getting paid less. And I think that was wrong too. And I think that's something that needed to be addressed.
And for the most part, it has been. I mean, you still have disparages throughout the country where, you have women that are not getting paid in certain areas, the same as their male counterparts. And that's bullshit. That should be something that shouldn't even exist at this point. And for the most part, I think that a lot of the social issues that affected us early on in this country's history have been solved for the most part, especially with the advent of social media and word being spread like wildfire. Like, for example, Activision, the game publisher, they're in a lot of hot water for how they've treated their employees, especially the female employees. And, you had your sort of casting couch stories from Hollywood of how people got in Hollywood. And nobody really talks about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they sucked a lot of dicks, though.
There's a lot of dark stuff in Hollywood. And we won't get into full details on that here. It might be something for a later episode. But it's pretty shady and pretty shitty. Shady and shitty.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pedophilia.
Mm-hmm. So, overall, this is going to be a very fun series to do. We're going to have different guests come on as well. A few people that you've already seen on the channel. I know that Kyle, Bacon, I think Michael wants to come on as well. I want to try to get more guests, people that are sort of prominent in these circles talking about these things. But this is a good first episode. I don't know about you guys. We got a lot of word out tonight. You guys talked about a lot of stuff.
I want to say also, like as a closing remark, history is painful. Okay, no matter the color, the creed, the culture, the gender, it's terrible. Believe it or not, the United States, for all of its shortcomings, has created a nation where everybody has an opportunity now. And the only reason why people fail is because they don't step out and, put their nose to the grindstone and go forward. Okay. But we don't want to reverse this. Okay. Where now there's an attack on white people versus black people in the past, for example, or any culture for that matter, because it defeats the purpose. Diversity is great. I am not strengthened by my diversity. I'm strengthened by the unification that we have as a people. You bring diverse things to the table that unify us. You see?
Yeah, absolutely. Diversity is a good thing. Too much diversity turns into bad things.
And collectivism also. And I think collectivism and diversity have been not, exercised properly within the entertainment industry.
Right. One of the main things that we're going to be hitting on a lot is identity politics. Okay. So everything from getting lectured to about the sins of white people to advocating for more representation, even though we have a shit ton of representation already. One of the things that we're going to be talking about is tokenization or tokenism of characters. So this is an example is when they turned Superman into a black guy, or they made Iceman from X-Men gay. And they did that not because it's to push positivity for diversity. They did it to appease that community. Instead of coming out with a new character, they decided to make an old character into a gay version. And I have a problem with that. I have a problem when you change an established character into something else just to get more people to come in to watch your stuff, to consume your product. I have a problem with that. I have a very big problem with that. And
However,
some people might like certain things about that, and that's fine. But I'm not here to talk about what we like per se. I'm here to talk about how doing that is not only lazy, but it also is hurting your brand, because you're claiming to do these things for representation, but what you're really saying is that we can't come out with a new character, so we have to rely on the namesake of an old character to get you to watch it. Because if they wanted to go full hardcore identity politics with a new superhero, it wouldn't sell. It wouldn't sell at all. So they have to rely on the marquee value of an old character to get you to buy it.
Sorry to interrupt, but that theory about like Superman being black or Batman being gay is, to be honest though, like to appease the audience though, like in part of tokenization though, shouldn't there be like there's this thing called the multiverse? Now,
Yeah, but here's the thing. That's still tokenization. It's like, yeah, there's a multiverse, but the multiverse is lazy in a way. I mean, you can like it. I'm not telling you what you can and can't like, Carter.
I know. I'm just.
They already have that. They have alternate universes like a black Superman, but it's still Superman. They're selling it as a black Superman. It's not a new Kryptonian character. It's literally Superman. He has the S. He has a similar backstory, but they just literally made him black. They gave him a different name, different coat of paint, and they sold it as that. And that's from an alternate universe. That's still lazy. It's still not good. It's
true, but at least you could have did something similar to like I said, like for Superman's backstory. I mean, you could have had like a story that involves that one of the Kryptonians was black though, and
yeah, but see, the argument isn't about not having black Kryptonians. It's literally about copying Superman and selling it for a new audience so they will buy the shit instead of creating a whole new character in and of itself.
Yeah, and that is why that some of the movies from Hollywood are shit though. But however, there are some fan films made by fans that are somewhat good though. Like example, the last fan film we saw together was Never Hike Alone, which is a Friday the 13th fan film, because we haven't got one since 2007 or 9. You know, the reboot. We haven't gotten one since though. The Fall of Camp Blood, other like, and not to mention though that if now, even though I'm like, because I have autism and I have this like, I think differently from different people though, and I just thought of like this cool idea for like a Star Wars series though, but it's not. I'm not going to tell you what it's about though, or the name of it, but you'll figure it out though. I'm pretty sure that like in the example of Cara Dune though, like in The Mandalorian though, she was a shock trooper, or her home planet was Alderaan, and she was a survivor of Alderaan, which was a nice concept though. Like good storytellers, there are some good storytellers, and then there's just some lazy fucks like Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, and Ryan Johnson. Yeah, I'm calling those fuckers out though.
Yeah,
compare them to Jon Favreau and
Dave Filoni.
Dave Filoni. Compared to those two, like they are like fans of Star Wars, and not to mention some of the source materials they gave us though were really fucking good. Like Star Wars: The Clone Wars, where we meet Ahsoka Tano. That's good. Star Wars Rebels. That's very fucking good. It's like, and not to mention The Mandalorian though. Like it's like imagine taking someone's fanfic and like turning it into an actual thing though, which is really, really, really fucking good though.
Yeah, there's so much material that's available to reach back to without having to get into the weeds with, things dealing with sexuality or whatever. Just tell a good story. That's what the fans want. What your sexuality is and your political positions are and your idealism. It's important, but you know what, man? Let's tell a good story and let's bring it to cinema.
Exactly.
So Rusty, hold on. There we go. So Rusty says, just to clarify why I like the Iceman thing. Although I agree with bringing new characters instead of reshaping old ones, it was relevant due to it being true for a lot of people in the past. But the thing is that if, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not completely well versed in some of the comic book characters. Hold on, he said something else. He said, younger Iceman confronts his older self and asks him about his sexual orientation. What we find out is that Iceman has been living in a closet for his entire life. Now, because I'm not fully well versed in all this, was he always like that though? Because I'm noticing, he says, older Iceman just didn't want to be persecuted and judged for another part of his life. So was Iceman gay from the start? Because this is something that I believe he was changed more recently in the comics. And again, I've listened to other people that have been in these comics longer than I have, and I'm not fully well versed in a lot of the comics. I'm getting into it though, but I've been seeing a lot of these things where they've changed established characters, turning them gay. Like they turned Robin gay, and that was out of nowhere. So, and if that's not what the character was before, and they just are now changing it, that was what I was getting. So he said he was gay from the start, but in the closet and was forced to confront himself. Now, is this storyline from the newer comics? Because I know that from the things kind of change from the older comics to the newer ones. Is there a story about him being gay from the? I don't even remember when the first X-Men comic came out. I'm so unwell versed in that stuff.
Uncultured, you mean?
No, not uncultured. I'm just ignorant. I'm ignorant on some of the source material. So, but if that's the case, then if he was gay from the start, from way back when, then all right. But from what I heard, that wasn't the case. That storyline about him being gay was something that was more recent. But I will say this, that our next episode is going to cover tokenization in depth, or as much in depth as we can. And I'm going to also be referencing a video from a YouTuber that I would highly recommend you guys check out. And you'll know more about him and the video that we're going to be referencing next time. And let's see. He responded. He said, yes, that's how they explain the change, so as to have a main X-Men gay character. So that's something that was more recent then. Yeah, see, I don't know then. I think that if a character was one way and you're just now changing or updating the story for that character to fit a modern audience, I don't know if I fully agree with that. Because you could easily create a new character, but a lot of people in the creative space these days aren't doing that. They're just banking off of the namesake of older characters. But again, I don't fully know about Iceman, so I could be completely off. But we're going to be getting more into this subject of tokenization in our next episode. And like I said, I'm going to be referencing a video in that episode about tokenization, and we'll go from there. So, you guys have any last thoughts before we get off for the night?
No.
Yeah, just keep an open mind and realize that, people's opinions matter.
Right.
And just because, when I was younger, we agreed to disagree, but we always came back together the next day to go play out in the street. Being out in the street and playing and doing all the crazy things we did really developed our relationships with each other. And it helped us to understand that, I need to respect this man's or this woman's position and realize that, hey, that's that person's position, but we can still hang out, have fun, have a good time,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we did
Civility.
a lot of good times.
Yeah.
The
Civility.
70s were great.
Being able to coexist. These things are very important because that's how we've survived this long. Because if we had a world where differing opinions ended in a fist fight, then humanity would be a lot smaller in regards for numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that this series was entertaining and educational. That's what we set out to do with this, is to entertain and educate.
And I know we were all over the radar. I know that, but that's what happens in a first episode, right?
Right. We'll agree at disagree on that. Yeah, I got you, Rusty, but we're good, man. It's all right. It's all right. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for everyone that joined in the chat. Rusty, you've been supporting us for a while. We really appreciate you coming on, talking with us, helping us go through some really crappy films. Quite a few Halloween films we've been through, haven't we? And yeah. Oh, we got somebody else in the chat. Hey, Kyle, how you doing, man? From Flet's House of Horror, he says, "Hey, Caleb, Carter, Mr. C, love your new show. Keep up the great, amazing work. And I've just been forced off a certain channel because I'm friends with you, Caleb and Carter." Oh, really? Somebody forced you off their channel? Oh, we're gonna have to talk about that.
Ooh, I wonder who.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm curious. But I'm very excited to get into this series. It's going to be very interesting, and it's going to be something that is going to evolve over time. We're not just going to cover one certain subject. The first few episodes will be particular subjects and subject matter. Episodes after that are going to be based on what news articles come out, what new information comes out about projects that we're interested in, and we'll go from there. So thank you guys very much for listening. Thank you for supporting all of us. We really appreciate it. And until next time, my fellow investigators, welcome to the war.